welcome Michael Unbroken to Coaching This Session. How are you doing today?
I'm amazing, my friend. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much. So you are a mental health coach, trauma coach. Can you explain to the audience what you do exactly?
So I work with adult survivors of childhood trauma,
Mhm.
and I help them to get unstuck, get over the past, learn to love themselves, and ultimately do the hardest thing that we do, and that's be the hero of our own story.
Mhm. Where do you think is the prime reason why people have, or the prime area where people have childhood trauma? Do you think it's because of the peers that they grew up with, or more so about like the family type of structure?
Well, it can be everything, man. Like, you think about this, our lives, we are the sum total of all of our experiences leading up till today.
Mhm.
And I think it would be dismissive not to really reconcile the truth that, like, in passing, even the littlest things can make people stuck. Right.
Mm.
I mean, somebody making fun of your haircut or your clothes, or, growing up poor or whatever that is, like, there's all these different things that you somehow subconsciously bring into your mind and hold on to that become these barriers to what's next. Like, you think about it, of course, there's the big trauma, there's the abuse, there's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, sexual abuse. Like, those things are for sure happening in the world, right? And then there's also the other part of it, just again, those little and passing things. And look, I'll be honest with you. You go look at like research like the ACE survey, the Adverse Childhood Experiences survey, they come to a conclusion 83% of people had an adverse childhood experience. I would
Mm.
argue it's much higher. It's actually 100%. I don't believe that anybody's coming out of childhood
Yeah.
unscathed.
Mhm.
And so, I think that we have to be very clear about recognizing that it's not just only these big things that we hear about or we read about. It's kind of just the human experience as a whole is kind of traumatizing.
Mhm. And to talk about that trauma, right? It's like a challenge per se too, because we have challenges, right? So if we have a challenge with dealing with someone who's making fun of our hairline, or we have a challenge with a family member, we are dealing with that challenge. And everyone has a unique journey where my challenges are going to be different than your challenges, but I can't belittle your challenges because they were your challenges, right? So that because those challenges helped you grow, my challenges helped me grow. And what I see is that many people would rather not have challenges. And going to parenthood, parents say, I want to give my child a life I never had. And if they didn't have that life, then they wouldn't be the adult they are today. It made them stronger per se. Now, of course, there's going to be negativities that I wouldn't wish on anyone. But then at the same time, overcoming those traumas, those challenges, it makes you stronger. Do you think that having challenges is a good thing per se in some retrospect, or are all challenges going to be considered bad?
I think that's a great question. Bruce Lee said, don't ask for an easy life. Instead, ask for the tools to navigate a difficult one.
Mm.
And look, again, I don't think anybody's getting out of this without challenge. It's just not going to happen. Just human nature built in its like core is survival. I mean, it really truly is. Like, every single day, like, you're on the brink of life and death. One mistake, it's all over,
Mm.
right? Walking across the street, looking at your phone, not paying attention, boom, game over, right?
Mhm.
Eating too fast, boom, game over, right? It's like all these things. It's crazy how easily you can die. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, if you really think about it. And so for people to want to not be challenged, I'm going to tell you this right now, you're going to live an unfulfilling life. You
Mm.
are. Now, look, I think that contextually, there are challenges I don't wish upon anyone. At 4 years old, my mother cut off my right index finger. I mean, she
Mm.
was a drug addict and alcoholic. My stepfather beat me and put me in the hospital. We were homeless as kids. I lived with 30 different families. I was a drug addict at 12 years old. I don't have a high school diploma, right? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I don't wish that stuff on anyone. But I'll tell you this, I would not be here helping hundreds of thousands of people without those moments. And in that, like, I want to be clear, there's a chasm, there's this giant gap you have to cross in reframing and changing your identity about those things that are going to be what decipher whether or not you are able to cross over into what's next. And so many people get stuck like where I was, just like, I'll stuff it all down and pretend it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And so those challenges that I experienced and had as a child, I just looked at them and go, I'm bigger than that. That stuff doesn't impact me. Are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure at 25 years old, I was 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, drinking myself to sleep, and I put a gun in my mouth.
Mm.
The challenges matter.
Yeah. There's a difference between overcoming a trauma, overcoming a challenge, and then presenting yourself as a victim, where you had the opportunity, just from, saying everything you said, to be a victim, right? My mom did this, my life was this. And you could have said, I'm the victim, I can't do anything. But you didn't. You said, I'm more than this. I can get over this, right? Regardless of the massive amount of hurt and trauma that I have went through, I have more in life. I have something more to give. What was that epiphany like for you when you realized at a certain moment in your life that I'm going to change everything around and I'm going to go for more in my life?
Well, I did play the victim, and I want to be very clear about, like, look, you don't get to where I was by not playing the victim. And I think, unfortunately, that's part of society. We grow up and you see it and you witness it, and especially if it's taught and groomed into you, you go, the world owes you everything.
Mm.
It's on them. Look, it was everybody's fault. It was everybody's fault when my life was upside down. It was your fault, the community's fault, my family's fault, teacher's fault, Obama's fault. Like, it was everybody's fault. It was never Michael's fault. Never. I was always the victim. And the more I did that shit, the more I realized, like, wait a second, this is happening because of the choices that I'm making. And I realized I had this rock bottom, right? I'm sitting here. It's the day after I had a gun in my mouth, and I'm at like the lowest. Like, how does it get lower than this? I was like, I hated everything about my life. I'm sitting on my bed. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. Keep in mind, I'm 350 pounds. I'm eating chocolate cake, smoking a joint, and watching the CrossFit games.
Mm.
Like, the ultimate rock bottom, and I look at that moment 11 years ago, almost 12 now. And there was something that happened. I don't know if it was an epiphany as much as it was, I was just so tired of myself. I was so exhausted with myself. And so I went in the bathroom. I'll never understand why I did this. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and I remembered being 8 years old, and the water company had come and turned our water off. Now, they were always turning off our water, the heat, the electricity. We were getting evicted all the time. I mean, it was just like another Tuesday. And I go in the backyard, I grab this little blue bucket, I walk across the street to our neighbor's house, and for the first time, I stole water. And I remember being like, all right, when I'm a grown up, this won't be my life. And it wasn't financially, right? I had a condo, I had a nice car, I had all these clothes, blah, blah, blah. But in every other way, I was still that hurt, lost little boy. I had done none of the work. And as I looked in the mirror, I realized, oh, wow, I actually have broken the promise I made to myself. I've let myself down again.
Mm-hmm.
This is it. It's now or never. And I asked myself a question. So what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? And the answer was no excuses, just results. And see, I wish it was simple to be like, oh, it was the epiphany, and I finally realized like everything was going to be better. But it was like rock bottom after rock bottom after rock bottom after rock bottom. Like, man, it was so bad constantly. The drinking, the smoking, the sex, the all the chaos of my life. It was like, man, how can I numb today?
Mm-hmm.
Like getting stoned, like I had a bowl on the side of my bed. So all I had to do was turn over, put it on my mouth, light it, and then I could start my day. And there comes a point in time in which I think for the people whose lives are going to change, in which you have to be fed up with yourself. And I wish that weren't the case. Like I think about this all the time. That's why I do things like this constantly. I'm like, how do we mitigate the risk of that moment? But to be fair and to be frank with you, I don't think you can. I think that the only way ultimately you get to that place where you change your life is when you're fed up with yourself. Because until that moment, everybody will tell you, my friends would be like, dude, you're kind of a monster. My brother was like, one of my brothers literally goes, I'll never talk to you again. Right. I'm as low as we can go. All of my friends only care about partying and doing drugs. And I'm sitting here just thinking to myself, well, guess this is my life. Not realizing that money, like everyone always tells you, is not the solution. And coming to find that this was going to be the catalyst for everything to be different. But in that moment, it was like I'd already hit rock bottom so many times. It was literally this in my thought process. Like, if I don't change now, I'm dead within a year.
Okay, yeah. Two things ring true to me or ring out to me. Number one, people don't change unless there is a trauma. Now, that's going to be the majority, right? They need that trauma in order to change. Very few people are going to say, well, I'm going to change my life today, and they do it. And it's impactful. Very few people have that ability. I always encourage people on my podcast to go make that change for something better. If you're not completely happy or fulfilled in your life right now, make the changes so we can get there, right? You don't have to wait for rock bottom. You don't have to wait for a severe trauma in your life to make that change. But many of my clients do wait for that moment in their life where they have that trauma, they have a difficulty, and they're looking for a way out or a way to heal. As much as I would like to tell people saying, hey, let's start now before things go bad, it's almost like saying, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow type of thinking. I'll do it tomorrow. I have tomorrow. But when we start to think that maybe we don't have tomorrow, then we can say, okay, well, let's start today. Look at New Year's resolutions. People say, I'm going to get in shape on January 1st. What's wrong with today? What's wrong with the month you're in, right?
True.
They wait. It could be February and they could say, I'm going to get in shape next year, right? I'm going to do this. And they put a contingency on their self-betterment. And I find that to be dangerous because they are just setting themselves up for a ticking time bomb moment where they're going to wake up and they're going to say, how did I get here? And it was because of inaction. They had the ability to make the change in their life, but they didn't. And what you experienced is what I deal with some of my clients is they had a moment where their soul was offended. And that's the way I do it with mindset to make it so they understand what is going on in their life. Their soul was offended. And you can offend the mind. You could offend a conscious mind, the subconscious mind. You could defend family members, whatever. But your soul, once you offend that, then your body's like, hey, we might have to do something about this because it understands that, hey, I'm trying to stay alive. And the brain is very tricky. I work all about the mindset. The brain wants to put in the least amount of effort, but get the maximum amount of results. So if it can not go to the gym and it's alive, the body's alive, then guess what it's going to do? It's not going to go to the gym because it's putting in effort. And the whole primordial thing of fight or flight, right? That is gone now, right? We don't have to worry about dinosaurs coming and kill us, saber-tooth lions in the bushes. We have homes, we have heat, we have grocery stores, we can get food. We don't have to go hunting. Our life has become very easy. Mm-hmm. And what that has done is made the brain, the mind, the body complacent. And now that it's complacent, it says, I don't want to push. I don't have to push. And it doesn't. So the brain says, if I don't have to do something, I won't do something. And it stays still until the moment, life or death now, because then it has to fight or flight. So it can no longer run away. It has no choice but to fight for life. The goal of the brain is to keep itself alive. That is what it thinks about. How can I stay alive today? And though they know, oh, I got to eat healthy, I have to exercise, that's energy, right? But the brain is also saying, I want to conserve energy. So we have to counterbalance that, where I understand you want to save energy and I understand you want to stay alive. But in order to have a long, prosperous life, we have to do the latter. We have to get our exercise in and we have to expend energy for that to happen. So we are having a longer life in the span of it, but we had to change our mindset per se. We had to say, I'm going to change my mind so I can change my life. And it does take a moment sometimes where the soul is offended. And then your brain is going to say, well, we have to fix this. So that's how I explain to people who are trying to make the change, but they don't know why they made the change. It was that their soul was offended at some point in some manner where the change is like, okay, it's going to happen, whether it be losing weight, changing habits, fixing relationships. It's all a matter of what was the grain of sand that tipped everything over, right? And it could be something small, it could be something big too. So we just have to know how to deal with that moment when it happens. So, what are some ways that you help people that are dealing with this trauma and want to get to better mental health?
Yeah, look, I think the most important thing is, and I think you're spot on about this. I love what you said about the soul being offended. I think that there's a, for lack of a better term, there's that moment of reconciliation that you are the cause and solution of all of your life's problems. And that's always step one. It's the acknowledgement, right? And people always go, well, how do I help people? I'll be honest with you, I don't help anybody. You help yourself.
Mhm.
I simply just have a roadmap here. That's it. I'm just giving you the same thing that I've discovered in my life, but you have to go execute, because action is the cure all. Action is the thing that will change everything. And you know, people talk about mindset all the time, right? And I think that the one truth about mindset that people have to understand if you're going to be successful in your life is the fact that you actually have massive control over it. But it really comes down to something that I think of in terms of this. You can't see it because it's a giant sign in front of me, but it says mindset is everything. I look at this every day. It's the first thing I look at every day. Mindset is everything. And I think we do a bad job of explaining to people, and this is my opinion, of course, truly what mindset is. And I believe mindset is this: what you think becomes what you speak become your actions, and your actions become your reality. And there are some of us who are so mean to ourselves that if you said it to me, I'd punch you in the face. And
Mhm.
you're expecting to be successful. There's a massive disconnect there. You see, and so I always teach people the very first thing whenever you do anything with me, you grab this thing called a pen. It's literally the most important tool in your arsenal.
Mhm.
It's more important than anything that you'll ever purchase in your life. And what you're going to do is you're going to write down what I'm going to tell you. And then you're going to convince yourself on a long enough timeline that this is true, because it matters. You're going to write, I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. And you might be thinking, well, why does that matter? Well, because think about this. If you're always being mean to yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not capable enough, and then you act in that manner, right? You don't show up for yourself, you eat like crap, you don't work out, you sabotage, then your reality is that. You live in what you create. And then if you're in this position of, wait a second, I am the kind of person who is kind to myself,
Mhm.
and you operate through kindness, you'll ask yourself in these moments of being challenged and doing and needing to do the thing that you know you need to do, you'll ask yourself, well, what would a person who is kind to themselves do right now? Would they go to the gym? Would they eat healthy? Would they do the journaling and the meditation and listen to the podcast? Would they leave the relationship? Would they start the endeavor? Would they move out of the city? Would they do all the things that keep them awake at night? And when you ask yourself that and you start thinking like a kind person, you will act like a kind person, and your reality will reflect that.
Mhm.
And that's where you start, because the words that you use matter unequivocally more than anything else. Because you can sit here, I think about it like this: what is the point of stepping into what's next if you're just going to destroy yourself all the way there? There is none. And so what you have to do is be willing to step into that space of kindness and know that the truth is it's really truly about accountability. It's about doing the thing that you said you're going to do. Kindness is like in these moments. And I think, you know, you look at this idea, these ideals about like self-care. People will even leverage self-care as why they can't do the thing that they need to do.
Mhm.
Like, I'm self-caring today. Are you though? Are you though? No, are you? Because if you are, respect, take care of yourself. But if you're using it as a scapegoat, well, would a kind person do that to themselves? Or would a
Mhm.
kind person do the thing that they needed to do that moved them towards the life that they wanted to have? And so that's kind of the game, right? You have to, the mindset thing is tricky because the only thing you've ever experienced is these limiting beliefs. And if you think about this, they're enmeshed in you, they're groomed in you, even from the youngest age. Even if you don't have this traumatic experience like I had, right? Maybe it's as simple as in third grade, right? Miss Smith comes and puts her hand on your shoulder. You're sitting there, you're coloring. You've made the house and you color the sun purple. And she goes, that's not how you color the sun. What is wrong with you? And she smirks, but all the kids laugh. And your
Mhm.
brain looks at that as danger, because what's more dangerous than being ostracized from the community, right? Especially at that age. And
Mhm.
so now, because the brain's service is to make sure that you survive, what it does is it says, wait a second, being me is unsafe. I cannot be me. So I will no longer be me because I need to survive. And the unfortunate part is that may serve you. For me, it served me in my own home and in school and in my community. And then you're 26, 38, 49 years old, and you don't know how to be you. You've never been given the space because your brain now has an autonomic response to the idea of being yourself. And it says, whoa, that's dangerous. I'm good. I'm going to keep being this other guy. And so what you have to understand is, trauma and abuse, it's not even necessarily only the experience of that moment that hinders you. It's the outcry for your identity being stolen. And you having to recognize that the only way that you get it back is you have to build it. And the only way that you build it is through the kindness of creating massive accountability in your life by showing up and doing what the hell you said you were going to do.
Mhm. You dropped so many gems on that, last part, because I used to be a former teacher. I taught music, I taught special education. I mean, K to 12. I have been in the school system. I see how teachers act. I see how students are. The limiting beliefs are ever prominent, and it's going to be a problem for as long as school is there, because we have to understand that teachers are going to be dealing with a lot, and they're going to have to find a way to get through the day and then get through their career by following what the politics say, the school system, the curriculum. They don't get much freedom. And as long as they are going to be stressed, overworked, underpaid, they're going to have these moments where they might be negative and they might say, Billy, this is not how you color the sun. Are you stupid? And that right there, that can trigger everything for that child. Now that child doesn't want to do anything else. They want to simply say, okay, I'm not going to even draw anymore, even though I might be the next Picasso. I'm not going to do that because of that one teacher. I saw that. I heard it in the teacher's room. People would talk bad about students. They'll say how students are so bad and they're, they should, be homeschooled or whatever it be. And when they came to my class, they were fine. Why are they fine in my class, but not in their class? Because they put a judgment upon that child. They said, this child can't do something. This person's not going to be anything. So the teacher doesn't try. They don't push themselves. They don't say, well, I want this child to succeed in life, so I'm going to make sure they succeed. For me, everyone is going to be getting 100% from me, and I expect 100% from them. It's just my expectations for that child, for the students. And that helped me in my teaching career have an easy time teaching. I didn't have problems. Now, of course, there will be a student who had a bad day, and there's going to be students dealing with things that you dealt with when you were younger. They didn't have food to eat. There was no electricity in the home, so they had to stay with grandma that night, and they had to sleep on the sofa. They had a bad night's sleep. All of those things compound to how they are in school. So I saw that. And I remember I had one student who was a heavy hitter. This was what I call students who, are you have to watch out for, right? He wasn't a bad kid. He was a sweet kid. And I remember talking to his mom one day after school, and I was like, hey, he's, doing this, wanted to make sure everything is good in the home, right? And she was, she told me everything that was going on with, dad being out the picture and him, having to deal with, her being at work all the time because she had to provide. And so he didn't have much support in the home where he would come to school now. He's craving attention and he doesn't care if it's negative. He says, I'm going to get negative attention. So that negative attention brought, the teachers to think negative toward him. And my grandma had a saying, if you can look at positive, you can think positive, then you're going to be walking toward positive. And that's true because when I started my whole mindset journey, becoming a mindset coach, I was thinking, how can I help people become more positive in life? And it's not so much be optimistic, because optimism is just a state of mind saying, well, I hope things go my way, rather than I'm going to make sure things go my way. There's a big difference between the action part. I'm going to change this situation no matter what, versus I hope this situation goes in my favor. The mind understands the words we say. So, how you were saying earlier, where this is self care. Okay, I understand you went to work 9 to 5. You might have a stressful job. You might be on your feet all day. And when you come home, you might say, I'm going to sit on the sofa and watch some TV because I deserve it. I need self care right now so I can get through tomorrow again. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't rest, but at the same time, what are you doing to get out of that situation from that 9 to 5 that's killing you? Many people just become numb or complacent in their life. And they say, well, this is my life, this is my circumstance, and they don't dare to change it. When I work with people and we start changing it, it's like they have to get out of that comfort zone. And right after the comfort zone is the fear zone, the fear of failure, the fear of success, whatever their fear is, that's stopping them from pushing past their old self into their new self. What is something you tell people that are in their comfort zone, that are maybe afraid to change, but there's more in life than just where they are right now?
Yeah. Every day you aren't moving towards your dreams, you're moving towards dying with regret. And that's a hard pill for people to swallow. Also, I want to say this. Teaching is arguably the hardest job on planet Earth, especially in America. And teachers don't get paid enough. It's nonsense, and they're not given the tools to help people be successful. And I have a huge amount of admiration for teachers. It's actually, when I was young, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a teacher when I grow up. And to some extent, I actually am. But I was like, I'm not dealing with the politics of that chaos. So I want to be clear, like, mad love for all of y'all. Here's the truth about life. It's kind of like the funny thing, like, get busy living or get busy dying. It's so true. Like, I know it's so simple and you hear it all the time, but it is true. And look, fear is an inevitability. That is a part of this journey. And especially when you're going through the process of stepping into what's next, you have to expect and anticipate and also appreciate that fear means you're doing something unknown. One of my homies, Trent Shelton, he said something really beautiful one time. He was like, fear is face everything and run, or face everything and rise. And I thought that was really beautiful because, like, ultimately at the end of the day, there's always fear. There's always that thing in your way. And if you're in that place of complacency, you're on the couch, action is the cure all. You have to force yourself into discomfort. There is no way you're going to grow without it. There's no way you're going to discover who you are without it. And the truth about this, and this breaks my heart, and I know that you'll probably agree with me. I won't put words in your mouth. I'll assume you'll agree with me. There's still 3% of people who will never change because they will be okay with where they are. One of the things that I've decided to do in my life, I play a little mind trick on myself. I always say, my goals are 37 years away. In 5 years, my goals will still be 37 years away. And that mind trick is about recognizing that this is a path and that you have to deploy just a massive amount of patience in order to actually get what you want. And most people will quit early because they failed to reconcile, or excuse me, they failed to recognize that this whole process, whether it's about healing or mindset or journey or creating businesses or building a life, It just takes longer than you think. Sharon Lecter wrote 3 Feet from Gold, and the synopsis of that book is very simple. You keep going. Some of your goals are just too damn small. Some of your goals are too small. And the reason why is because you've been limited since the time you were a child. Everyone around you, I will never, ever forget this till the day I die. My stepfather's mom once told me, because she was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, I want to be Jay-Z. I want to be Foo Fighters. Like, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a rock star as a kid. She goes, you'll never do that. You'll never be good enough. And I remember thinking to myself, like, okay, that's not just a her thing. That's a societal thing. Everyone's always like, don't be the astronaut. Don't be the ball player. Don't. That's all you ever hear. And I'm sitting here like, well, why not? Mm. Do you want it or not? And the thing is, you got to be willing to want it. And you have to understand that the people who get to it, like I look at my life now, like I am in a sense a rock star. I'm doing the thing that I wanted to do because I'm on stages all the time. I've spoken in front of 4 people. I've spoken in front of 10,000 people, right? And the thing about that is like I was always moving towards that stage ever since I was a kid. Like that's my happy place. It terrifies the crap out of most people, but for me, that's where I thrive. And so, you think about all the people who want to limit you. The first thing that I would say, like, really is like, A, think about your goals. Think about your dreams. Make them bigger than they are now. So you have something that's actually worth moving towards. Like, Think Unbroken is very simple. This entire company, everything that we do is about one mission: end generational trauma in my lifetime through education and information so another kid doesn't have a story like mine. That mission is so far-fetched, uncomfortable, impossible. Hell, it's probably irresponsible, but that ain't going to stop me. And so every single day, I'm like, how do I move towards that? Most people are like, I only want to make $50,000 a year. Why not 50 million? People are like, I just want to have a good enough relationship. Why not the best relationship of all time? People are like, I just want enough. What does enough mean? Mm-hmm. Who determines that? And so if you're in complacency, it's because you've decided you're okay with where your life is. And the people who decide otherwise, they are the people who step into greatness. But look, here's the really tricky part about this. Like, the reality about it is that you have got to come to terms with the fact that one of the biggest reasons that you haven't stepped forward and announced the life that you want is because you are terrified of being judged. You are terrified. And somebody listening, I know who you are. I hear you right now. You're like, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. Or you'd be doing the thing that you said you were going to do. And you have to recognize, like, nobody cares. Like, this is what's so funny about it, man. Like, I remember the first time I was like, all right, I'm going to go put out this blog I wrote. This is like 7 years ago. I was like, oh man, this is so, I proofread it like 37 times. I was like, all the pictures are right. The headlines are, everything's perfect. I was like, oh my God. All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. 3 days later, I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then I put it out and I was so scared. I was like, oh my God, people are going to see me. They're going to know my dreams. And nobody read the damn thing. No one cares about your dreams. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I don't want to be the bad guy here, but nobody cares. So you might as well go for it, because it's going to take you forever before anyone even pays attention to begin with. And every single day you're not moving towards that, whatever that is the life that you want to build, you're moving towards death. And in that death is regret. And that regret is a life unlived. And that's my biggest fear.
Hmm. And I wanted to argue on the 3%. You said 3% will never change. I would like to say 10%, actually. 10% is going to be the amount of people who will not change just because they just can't get over their brain. They just can't get over the idea that they have more in life than just what they are living right now. And it's sad. They have to figure out, okay, I'm just going to be here. And how do we get out of that, right? And of course, I encourage people, get a coach, find a mentor, a guide, someone like yourself who can say, hey, wake up, right? And the general populace is not going to care, right? The people who are your peers, people who are walking on the sidewalk with you, on the same subway as you, They don't care about you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can find like a coach, a mentor, or a guide that is willing to be on that journey with you, they care about your success to some degree. Because I know I do. When I'm working with individuals and I have clients, I care about their success just as much as they care about them succeeding. And I understand that it can be difficult to believe in people, especially if you have been forsaken all your life, where people have lied to you, they were deceitful, and you only see hate in your eyes. The world is just a bad place to be, and I'm going to be by myself. So we live in our 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartment. We try not to leave the house unless we have to. And we just create a little area where we can be ourselves, where we're not judged. Even though that seems like an okay life, that's not living. You are alive, but you're not putting the living aspect to it. What's going to make you fulfilled at the end of the day? Are you
Mm-hmm.
going to be fulfilled just staying in your apartment, eating Domino's, getting favor delivered every day that you want? Or are you going to say, I want to do something that I have always wanted to do, but I am afraid? I understand that people are afraid. Hell, I am afraid sometimes, but I know how to get over that fear. I don't allow the fear to determine my future. I have a rule. If I start to feel fear, I just have to count down to three. It is simple. If fear comes in my mind for some reason, three, two, one. And on one, my step is going forward, regardless of what it is. I do this sometimes when, or I did it, I don't do it anymore, I'm married, but when I was out at the bar, I see a girl I like, I want to talk to her, but is she going to like me? Right? Self doubt. And I say, well, it doesn't matter if she doesn't like me. I'm never going to have the opportunity to speak with her ever again if I don't make the move now. Because if I don't make the move now, even if I saw her at the grocery store in a month, a year, I'm going to be too afraid to walk up to her again. Because the first time you don't do something, you build a roadblock, you build a huge wall to your goal. So I know not to allow those walls to form in my life. So I go three, two, and I'm walking to her. Now, doesn't matter if it's going to be a success. As long as I do the action, my brain is rewired. And I'm saying, well, that was scary, but I didn't die. So now it's like, okay, you can talk to girls. So I can talk to girls, I can talk to anyone. But at the same time, it's like, what's the next fear? Right. And I'm paying attention. And eventually you figure out your lifestyle. So if you are a single person and you're going out talking to people, eventually that's going to be a walk in the park for you. But if you don't do it enough, then you don't have that confidence, right? Because if you don't have the confidence, then you're not going to say, well, all right, I can do this, right? Building confidence is going to be essential when we are trying to get to our next self. We have to be confident that what we're doing has a meaning. And many people don't see that meaning initially, similar to going to the gym. I'm going to go to the gym. They go one day, they don't see results. Okay, well, okay, I'm gonna go a week this time. I'm gonna go to the gym religiously for a week. Only thing they get from going to the gym for a week is sore muscles. And they say, I don't really like this. I look in the mirror, I'm still fat, but now I'm sore. So they say, this is not helpful. So they stop, right? Pain, that pain. And you can think of it any way you want. What is that pain to you? Is that pain growth, or is that pain going to be that barrier that stops you from getting past it and into a healthier body, a healthier mind? Because even your mind has to go through that pain when you're trying to change how it thinks. It might not be a physical pain, but you're thinking all that insecurity, all that fear, it doesn't feel good, right? And I encourage people, yes, it's not going to feel good at that moment, but if you stay true in a year, 2 years, depending on how much work you put in every single day, how much you believe in yourself, you're going to make a change. But it doesn't happen overnight. Change takes time. Change takes a huge amount of effort, a huge amount of energy. And, having a coach, a mentor, a guide is going to make that change a little bit easier, but the ball's in your court. I can't make you go to the gym. You have to decide to go to the gym. Now, of course, I can give you a workout, I can give you some motivation, but I can't go there and lift the weights for you. Because if I do that, I'm helping me, not you. How can you start to help yourself? Ask yourself, how can I help me every single day? How can I grow every single day? How can I be better than I was yesterday? And that's my goal. How can I be better than I was yesterday? And I always put a goal behind a goal. So if I have a goal to, let's say, talk to 1 million people in an audience, that's a lot of people. But when I reach that goal, what happens, right? It was a very difficult, challenging goal to get to that point. What happens after I do it? Do I just go home and say, well, I accomplished my goal? Now I'm just going to sit home and just relish in the fact that I talked to 1 million people in the audience? No, there's a goal behind that goal. And many people give themselves a goal of, I want to make $50,000. Okay, well, you make $50,000. Now what's next? Well, I didn't think about that. We have to think about what's next, because if you don't think about what's next, then that's where we become complacent, right? We're not thinking about our future. We're just thinking about getting through the day. How can we survive today? Now, you might scrape by the skin of your teeth, but at least you have something in the back of your mind saying, how can I get through to tomorrow? And then that tomorrow actually evolves. How can I get to next week, next month, next year? Then we start to put goals behind that. It's a process. It's not going to be, okay, let's give you a goal, 17 goals that you have to accomplish, and this is going to be the time span. We have to start small, the building blocks. We have to create building blocks for you to understand these are the approachable steps. Because if I tell someone to do this and it's so wide in the span of how much energy or how much effort they have to input into it, they're not going to do it. And that's, again, going back to the mindset, going back to the brain, going back to how they think about a situation or a task. So we break it down into small steps, and then we start to deal with that. Is there a way that you can break down trauma into small steps and say, okay, let's deal with this trauma first, and then go up and then starting to deal with the bigger traumas? Or do we kind of just throw it all in a bowl and say, okay, let's dive in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's a great prefix to that. I love what you said. And something came to mind. One of the things I teach my clients all the time, I don't teach them this, I tell them this. I am not here to be your friend. I'm here to be your coach. And that is about something very simple, and understanding that, like you, my favorite part about this is when somebody comes to me and they're like, I'm good. I'm ready to go take on my life. And I'm like, let's roll. I never want anybody in my programs. Never. I don't want anybody to listen to my podcast. I don't want anybody to do the courses. I don't want anyone to do group coaching. I don't want anyone to be in this ever. Right. My mission is to end generational trauma. Right. So I recognize that the only way I'm going to do that is people have to be willing to step in. And so when they do that and they come out the other side and they're like, I understand my life better, the world better. I'm moving in the way that I want to move. I am creating change in my life because I choose to change. I'm like, that is a victory. I love when somebody messaged me or we have our last call. It's my favorite thing. And to your point about like, where do you, like, how do you chunk away at this, right? Everybody is so different, but I think there's kind of a few baseline aspects that are incredibly tangible that people should all step into, that kind of are throwing it all in the pot, right? And I think that a few of them really start with being able to have support. You have to have a community in this. Like, you're not going to be able to do this on your own. I promise you, you're not. Just stop. Save yourself the time right now and just go get a part of a community. Not even my community, doesn't matter, just a community, whether that's AA or NA or adult survivors of this or that. Like, find a mentorship group, find a community, find something where you can have a place to be seen. Right. One of the biggest things with trauma, especially, is we revert to being invisible. It's safe. It's just like what you talked about. It's that little space in the one bedroom. That's where we feel like we can be us. Well, what you come to find is that actually isn't long-term viable, and you'll go insane and you'll be depressed and you'll be anxious and all the things that come with that. And so the first thing I always think is, like, the tool that you need to like utilize is the willingness to have the courage to go and be vulnerable by going and being a part of a community. And in that, you'll learn that you're not actually alone. One of the things I think is the greatest misnomer in this journey is people are always like, nobody else has this problem. Bullshit. There are 8 billion people on planet Earth. There's a 0% chance you're the only one struggling with this. There's a thing called Google. You have it, use it. There's probably a community. It could be so like, all right. So I was having a conversation with somebody one time and they were like, I bet there's not a podcast for everything in the world. I was like, yes, there is. I guarantee it. I was like, I'll prove it to you right now. And I go, all right, what's something obscure? We're eating sushi. I go, I bet there's a podcast about rice. Think about that. That feels very obscure. Sure enough, podcast about rice. Chances are somebody is in that thing that you want. And so you build that community, and then you got to get into doing the work, right? And doing the work is going to be different for everybody. For me, it was therapy 3 times a week, EMDR, CBT, NLP work. It was all of that. It was Gestalt. It was men's group trauma. It was all these different things constantly. It was going to AA and SA and NA and these anonymous groups, just trying to like touch the base and be like, is this who I am? And then it was like getting deep into personal development, reading the books, going to the conferences, having a coach, right? And I think what comes with that is you're just kind of putting your hand on it and going, does this feel like what I need? And it's what's really fascinating is you'll actually find that a lot of that stuff just is not. Right. You'll find 1 or 2 things where you're like, this really makes sense. And then you'll get deeper into it and you'll discover more and you'll learn. I think education is at the forefront of all of this. You've got to learn. You have to be willing to bring in new concepts and ideas, remove yourself from the fixed mindset, right? One of the most dangerous things that people say is they'll be like, this is who I am. That's the problem. Like, don't you realize that? And I used to be that guy. But like, nope, this is who I am. I'm a monster. I'm an asshole. None of my friends like me. I'm overweight. I smoke 2 packs a day. This is who I am. Leave me alone. Let me be in my devices. And then you recognize like that is the ultimate fixed mindset. You will never grow. You will never change. And so if you're open to the exploration of just seeing what exists outside of the scope of your 1 bedroom, it's incredible what you will discover. And it's going to be clunky. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have failure, right? But in those failures, you'll collect data and you'll iterate. And we're iterative beings, meaning that we always are bringing in all this information to decipher, to figure out who we are. One of the things that I think is probably unfortunate is we always think we know who we are. Well, if you've been through trauma, and if it holds true, which I believe it does, that trauma is the theft of the identity, you cannot possibly know who you are because you've never had the space allotted to you to explore that truth. And so as you're going through this journey, give yourself the space to fail massively, to make huge mistakes, to do things that you said you weren't going to do, to fail forward, as it were, in the words of John Maxwell, and to be able to put yourself in this position of doing something very simple. And that's to give yourself grace. That doesn't mean you don't push yourself. Let's be clear. You need to push yourself. You need to do things you've never done because the things that you have done have got you to where you are. And if you want to get to where you want to go, you have to do things you've never done before. But in that, give yourself grace and compassion and empathy. But do not allow yourself to stop. And instead, ask yourself, what am I willing to do to have the life that I want to have? And I promise you, if the answer is anything less than no excuses, just results, good luck.
Mm-hmm. Definitely powerful too. The idea of a community, of someone being there, helping you along the way. In the beginning, you might not see it as viable because your mind is just still playing tricks on you. It's saying, well, this is who I am. As long as that mind is thinking that, it's going to be difficult to get to that growth type of mindset. However, there is something that you can do if you're thinking like that. Start to hang around with people who think the opposite. So if you have a fixed mindset, start to hang around with people who have a growth mindset and just hang around them. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to open up, just hang around them. It's going to rub off on you. When people come to me and they're super negative, they're trying to figure out their life, okay, well, I'm growth minded, right? I'm going to be talking in a way where even if you're fixed minded, you can say no all you want, but eventually my words will permeate and you're going to start to say, well, okay, I'm going to try, right? And I do my best to make sure that when you're taking those first steps out of that fixed mindset, that they're the best steps of your life. Because then you say, this wasn't so bad, right?
Mm.
And so maybe halfway through that journey, maybe you fall, you get hurt. We can talk about that. We can say, all right, look how far you have come, right? From where you are. And we had a hardship, but that's life, right? We talk about that. We have that community. We surround ourselves with people we would like to become. There's a saying, if you hang around with 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th. And vice versa. If you hang around 9 successful people, you'll be the 10th. And it's so powerful. Who do you associate yourself with on a given day? And it's difficult when you are by yourself because that's your world. That's who you associate with 100%. Yeah, you might see someone at the grocery store if you're going out, but you don't have a connection with that person. So you're not going to care about their type of mindset or their traumas or who they are because you're worried about you still. Opening up that door and allowing someone in your life. And what better way than to have a coach, mentor, to guide? Again, someone like yourself, Michael, come into your life and say, all right, I'm going to allow him to begin the process of healing. And that doesn't have to be he's moving things around, decorating your home, your mind. That can be just facilitating your emotions. Talk to me. Just tell me what's going on. Let's have a conversation. And when we get things out of our mind, maybe on paper, if you do journaling, or if you're just talking to someone therapy, then it's out of our mind. I have a technique that I do with many of my clients where we do a journaling, where we do a journal, but we never read it ever again. And as soon as we write a word, a paragraph, page, we never read it again, but it's there. We get rid of that negativity. And when it's all out, and it takes some time sometimes, it could take months. When it's all out, let's start to fill our mind with things that we will read. And then we start to read the things that we want. So we are just telling the brain, this is what we prefer, not this. Subconsciously, this is what happens. This is no, this is yes. But this was my life. This is my experience. I'm going to retain that in my thinking, but not in the forefront of my mind. So yes, I understand I had this negativity, all this hardship, but it's not who I am right now. This is who I am. I'm going to recite who I am. I'm going to pronounce who I am. I'm going to show the world who I am. And I do that by rereading the good stuff. When you reread that good stuff, guess what starts to happen? You start to produce that good stuff. And it's a process. It's a process. It could take time. I don't typically know people who can do it in a month. It takes time. And you have to be willing to invest in yourself. Do you want to invest in a few months, maybe a year of time to the best self, to the healing that you need or that you want, so you can get out of this trauma, that you can get to better mental health, and then you can start to live the life that you should or want to be living, right? Depending on how you want to phrase that. Me, I'm more of the should be living rather than want to be living. It's just who I am. I found that the word want is nice, but for me, should is more pronounced. Everyone is different. And I offer people to choose the word that resonates with them. Because if you want a good life or you should be living a good life, that's up to you, right? Because you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I can't make you do anything you don't want. Understanding that you are the creator of your future. Do you want a good future, right? So, final words from you. And then, of course, please share with people how they can find you.
Yeah, I mean, and this was a phenomenal conversation. Thank you so much. You've given me this space, makes you a part of my mission to end generational trauma in my lifetime, and I'm amazingly grateful for that, my friend. Look, I'm everywhere on social at Michael Unbroken, but you can listen to the Think Unbroken podcast if you just go to thinkunbrokenpodcast.com. That's where I teach everything, and you can download the Think Unbroken app for free in the App Store or on Android.
Perfect. All right, everyone, Michael Unbroken.